Hey guys, Andrew here again. Today I am doing a series review, and that series is the Bartimaeus Trilogy by Jonathan Stroud. I got all three books here. Oop. And and okay, so I'm gonna apologize now. It This isn't a series that I just finished, and I'm give you an on-the-spot review. This is one I finished maybe a year ago, give or take. And the story is a little less than fresh in my brain, but that said, I do like the series. It is one I kind of want to talk about. It's really sad when I gotta go. Do I like it? The series is interesting. I'll say that instead. The series has its points. So I'm going to talk about the first book, which is the Amulet of Samarkand. I apologize for the pronunciation. Weird word. Okay, so this series focused from two main characters' perspectives. First, you have Bartimaeus, who is a djinn. And in this universe, there is magic. But magicians don't create magic. What they can do is summon spirits. And certain level spirits can do certain different types of magic, but the higher level the spirit is, the more powerful and more dangerous it can be. And the other main character is Nathaniel. Now, Nathaniel is a young magician's apprentice who is put in the care of a mid-level magician who basically doesn't want to teach a student much of anything. Nathaniel has very strong drive, very strong magical understanding, wants to move on to create bigger and better magic. But his master's like, no, you can't handle summoning a demon, you can't do this and that. And there's a couple reasons for it. It's like I said, the higher level the demon, the more likely something is to go wrong. And Nathaniel's at an age where he hasn't been given his magician's name yet. He only has his real name. And in this world, if you know someone's real name, you have power over them. So if a, a demon learns your name, they can use it to manipulate you, or they can use it as a threat to get you to do what they want, type of thing. So an incident occurs where Nathaniel and his magician, whose name is Arthur Underwood, run into another high-level magician by the name of Simon Lovelace. Now, Simon Lovelace does a cruel joke on Nathaniel and humiliates him horribly in public. So Nathaniel decides he wants to get revenge. He wants to steal the most important item that Lovelace has. So he summons up the demon Bartimaeus, who is a djinn, like I said, and it basically enslaves him through doing the specialty parts in the summoning circle. Enslaves him, gives him instructions to go and steal. So he goes and steals the amulet, and manages to avoid being captured or caught by other demons that are working for this big magician. As Bartimaeus returns, he hears the wife of Nathaniel's master called Nathaniel by name. So now Bartimaeus has a bargaining chip. He has a way of getting. He has power over Nathaniel. He's like, if you send me back, I will tell everyone what your real name is, and they can use that to destroy you. And while they're discussing this, the magician's house is attacked and destroyed, and Nathaniel manages to escape with Bartimaeus. But now they are on the run from the English government. So this is all set in London, much like another book that we read in this series, or in this club. So, and all of the high-level positions are held by magicians. And the higher up, the more power they have. So Nathaniel is now on the run and trying to figure out what Lovelace is doing, because Lovelace has a plan, and he has a very powerful demon on his side named Ramuthra. And, you know, that basically it's clear that something very dark and very dangerous is happening, and they have to go and basically stop Lovelace, get their names cleared, and save everyone. I could tell you more about the book. I honestly could. I'm not going to, because again, I don't want to spoil the endings wise. But if I want to talk about the other books in the series, I kind of have to. I'm going to say these are main characters in a series that has more than one book, and characters follow into the book, so clearly they succeed. Along the way in the first book, they run into a group of thieves who are immune to magic to a certain extent. And the one leading this is a woman who becomes a major character in the second book and third book. Her name is Kitty Jones. Now, book two, it focuses on Nathaniel and Bartimaeus had reached a deal and an understanding, and basically Bartimaeus agreed never to reveal Nathaniel's real name to anyone, provided that Bartimaeus was never summoned by him again. There are events, however, that happen in the start of the second book, where there was a large resistance movement of people trying to rebel against the magicians. Nathaniel is in charge of the task team that is trying to capture and crush these resistance and their members. While this is happening, there is a clay golem that appears and it starts attacking random parts of London. So Nathaniel, who is now known as John Mandrake in this version, because, you know, his magician name was picked, knows he has to summon a very powerful being to help him, and a djinn is fairly powerful. They are level 4 out of the 5 levels. So he summons Bartimaeus, has him under different clauses to keep him from being able to ever say the name, and they go searching for the golem. This story focuses a lot more on Kitty Jones. Kitty Jones is one of the members of the resistance movement, and she is out to get justice and revenge against the magicians because the magicians mutilated her friend, and he ended up basically becoming a vegetable. So she's all about trying to stop this, to get this, to take down the government, and she comes across a story of a tomb that is supposed to have very powerful artifacts that even non-magic users can use. And they go and unleash this tomb, and it has a very strong curse, and there's a curse of a demon that has been imprisoned inside the remains of a human skeleton. So he busts loose and is causing mayhem on top of all the trouble that the Golem's causing, and they basically find out that who the person that's created the Golem, but they have to take down the new demon unleashed in this human skeletal form. There's a lot more to this story. But this book is the worst of the three by a large margin. It's very slow, doesn't have a lot going on, and all the stuff that is going on is extremely interesting. And then you get onto the third gate, the third book, Ptolemy's Gate. Now, this one is more interesting. You get a little bit more background into Bartimaeus and who he was and who his former masters were. But basically, at this point, Bartimaeus has been out in the human world for weeks. And Nathaniel just keeps sending him to do different missions, this and that. He refuses to send Bartimaeus home in any way, shape, or form. For a couple of reasons. The main one being is he's super paranoid and going a little bit crazy at this point in the story. But as the longer Bartimaeus is out of the spirit realm where his people reside, the weaker and weaker his body becomes. And Kitty Jones is also plays a bigger part in this. She's basically everyone thinks she's dead, but she managed to survive and is working in a bar trying to find do research on magic and spirits and become something of a magician herself, even though she doesn't necessarily possess the magic ability. So basically, Nathaniel pushes Bartimaeus to the brink of death, and at the last seconds finally develops a conscience and sends Bartimaeus back into the spirit realm. Problem is, less than, I want to say, maybe 2 hours later, Bartimaeus is resummoned back into the human world, but this time he is summoned by Kitty Jones. She's trying to figure out, what's going on. There's clearly someone trying to take over the government, doing different things. And as a result, Kitty ends up being captured, and Nathaniel summons Bartimaeus and starts to figure things out. There's someone in the government that's trying to take over. This is clearly a governmental coup. And Nathaniel realizes that he's been playing for the wrong side, that and ends up teaming up with Kitty and tries to save the world. It's like like I said, we get to learn a lot about Bartimaeus, and we get to learn about one of his former masters, a magician by the name of Ptolemy. Now, Ptolemy was a well-beloved magician. He was the brother of one of the Egyptian pharaohs. He and Bartimaeus, basically, this was the only human Bartimaeus ever remotely liked or respected. He's hated all of his masters, no more than Jonathan Mandrake, no more than Nathaniel. They basically figured out that Ptolemy's Gate was a way to send for a human to enter into the spirit's realm. Okay, so we discover and we find out that the governmental takeover from the inside is not by magicians, but is actually by demons. So the demons have figured out a way to overthrow the government and gain control, and that is by doing something that they first discovered was even possible in the second book, when they came across that human skeleton with a demon inside of it, which is you can fuse a demon soul into a human's body. And by doing so, that person gets super strong abilities, but the demon almost always is stronger than the human and will overpower them and take over. Bartimaeus sees this as the worst sin his people can do, because it's giving up everything that makes them who they are. It's a bad thing. It's very bad. These demon-possessed humans are dramatically powerful than any other magician. And it becomes clear to Bartimaeus and Nathaniel that the only way to even stand a chance of fighting these people is to, first off, use the weapon that was in the tomb in the second one, which is a very powerful magic rod used by the original John Mandrake. I'm pretty sure. And also to fuse together themselves. Now, you get to that gray of, isn't that the thing you're cursing the other people of? And it's like, well, one, you have to fight fire with fire sometimes, and two, it's like the difference is that Nathaniel and Bartimaeus are able to be stronger than these other ones because the demon has to fight the human down. He has to keep that suppressed so he's not working at 100% capacity. Whereas Nathaniel and Bartimaeus teamed up and working together in pure synchronicity and just perfectly combined allows them to gain the upper hand in this battle. I'm not going to reveal the ending. It is both a twist and predictable. The ending of this one lowers the book a bit for me. So I'll talk a little bit about each book my thoughts on each book, because they all have their own strengths and their differences. So with the first one, with the Amulet, it's half of a good book. The first half of the book is very dry, very boring. It's like, oh, Nathaniel's just a kind of a whiny brat that just, I want respect and I want power. And it's like, you have no skills, you haven't been taught anything, but I want it. Yeah. And Bartimaeus is a jackass from all of the books, but it's even worse, I think, in parts of the first book. It's only when it becomes them on the run and they're having to fight and having to survive that the book picks up and is interesting and has something going for it. The second book is bad. It's pretty bad. It's got, like, the plots are all over the place, and every time something sort of interesting happens to a character, they jump to one of the other characters, and then it's slow, it's not well explained, and my biggest problem with the book series overall is our main character, Nathaniel, is a jerk and a jackass for almost all of the books. He's only a good character, a good person in any sense of the form for half of 2 of the books. And the rest of the book, I hate him. And that's why 2 is the worst, because 2, that's all he is he's just that jackass for the entire book. And, like, the plot's all over the place, things don't make sense, it's too weird and complicated and all over the place. And then we have the third one, this Ptolemy's Gate. Now, Ptolemy's Gate is actually, I would say, is probably the best one of the 3. It's 3/4 good. The beginning part, again, is slow and rough because you have Nathaniel still being the jackass character and literally making Bartimaeus nearly die because he doesn't realize that his slave is suffering, and too worried about his own safety to care about his demon, even though they have to rely on each other to survive for good parts of the books. But once he figures that out and has the click, and it becomes better, and him and Kitty have a good reaction in this book, and the way they work together, and the way him and Bartimaeus work together is all really interesting. And then you get to that ending, and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's hard for me to say if I like this ending or not. There's certain series that end this way that I'm like, was that even necessary? That didn't seem necessary. This one, I'm like, it kind of seems necessary, but it kind of doesn't. I don't know. Overall, the series is okay at best. When we read Darker Shade of Magic, it reminded me a lot of this book series because it's set in London. It's all about magicians and magic and this and that. And the complaints that some of you had about that one, where it's slow and hard to understand and hard to follow, that it's worse in these books. These are super hard to understand and follow once they especially get going. There's so many demons and such different levels, and every demon has a different purpose or a different thing, and it's just like, This is a book series that I still own. I did buy all of them. Granted, I read them after I bought them. But yeah, I'm like, this is one where I'm like, I've almost put it up for sale a couple of times because I can't say how I really feel about it. It's like, book 1 is a 3.5 out of 5. Book 2 is a 1 out of 5, and book 4 is a 4 out of 5. Book 3 is a 4 out of 5. And I call this the Bartimaeus Trilogy, because it was originally called the Bartimaeus Trilogy, but they've since released it in a 4th book called The Ring of Solomon, which is all about Bartimaeus and some of his stories with his previous masters. I'm not reading that. I have no plans to ever read that. I'm definitely not going to buy that, because I don't see the point. I don't like Bartimaeus. I like elements of Bartimaeus, but I mostly don't like Bartimaeus because he's a jackass through most of the book. That's my main problem. Is like, you have 3 main characters, and the only one that's any good is the one that has the least amount of attention, especially in the first book, which is Kitty Jones. So, yeah. It's like, between this and A Darker Shade of Magic is dramatically better, because both of those main characters are likable. I honestly can't recommend the series. If some of this sounds like something that might interest you, you're welcome to try. There's some good parts in these books, but honestly, if you're really thinking this book sounds good to you, and you haven't read or really liked Dark Shade of Magic, don't do that. read Darker Shade of Magic. If you've read Darker Shade of Magic and you want something similar to this, I would still look elsewhere. But that said, if this is something that interests you, good luck. There are people that love this book. I'm just not one of them.